record the live. And so it is now recording. And with that, I'm going to pass it on over to our wonderful presenters for this evening.
Cool. Thank you, Cindy. Hi, DSF friends and family. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about financial aid application processes and the DSF scholarship. My name is Maria Finan. I am the lead campus advisor for the Denver Scholarship Foundation at CU Denver, and I'll be joined later in the presentation by my teammate Natasha Garfield, who is our Director of Scholarships and Financial Aid here at DSF. Tonight, we will be talking about everything financial aid, including why your student should apply for financial aid, determining which application is right for your family, whether that's the FAFSA or the CASFA, and then understanding whose information is needed for each application. We'll go through how to create accounts for FAFSA and CASFA, understand what information you'll need to complete your FAFSA or CASFA with your student, what to expect once you submit that application, and then how to find support and next steps. At the end, we'll also do an overview of our DSF scholarship and its benefits to your student. As Cindy mentioned earlier, we encourage you to submit questions throughout the Facebook Live. So you're welcome to type your question in the comments, and then our DSF team will be able to respond to the questions either via the comments or live during our presentation. As you submit questions, please do avoid adding any personal identifiers, including your name, date of birth, addresses, social security number, things like that. If you do have a more personal question that you'd like to ask our team, you're welcome to follow up with DSF separately. And if for whatever reason we don't have the answer to your question tonight, you are also welcome to follow up with us after the presentation. All right, so let's dive into it, starting with the why as to why students need to submit financial aid applications when they go to college. Most colleges and universities do require students to submit either their FAFSA or a CASFA to be awarded financial aid. And in submitting those applications, it opens up all sorts of possibilities for your student, including being eligible for grants, scholarships, work study, and loans, which I'll touch on in just a moment. Most students under the age of 24 are required to have their parents provide information for financial aid. And in doing that, it doesn't mean that you're required to pay for your students' college education. It simply lets the college and university know whether your student is eligible for financial aid. The four big types of financial aid that we talk about are grants, scholarships, work study, and federal loans. Grants are need-based money without repayment. You'll often see those come from federal and state entities as well as from your student's school. Scholarships are merit or performance-based, so we often see those come from students' high schools, from corporate entities, from local scholarship providers, and that's money that doesn't have to be repaid either. The next type of financial aid is called work study. That's when your student has a job on campus and their earnings are paid directly to the student as wages. And then the final type is federal loans, which are a fixed rate, low interest loan that will need to be repaid. The next big thing to determine is whether your student should submit the CASFA or the FAFSA. We have this chart so you can briefly think about which application might make the most sense for your family based on your circumstances. Students only complete the CASFA or the FAFSA, never both applications. So take a look at this table and see which application your family might fall into. I'm going to talk about the FAFSA in just a moment, and then Natasha will jump in to talk about the CASFA. All right, so what is the FAFSA? The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It's used by colleges across the nation to see if a student qualifies for financial aid. So those four types that we just talked about, the grants, the scholarships, work study jobs, and loans. FAFSA is not a scholarship application and it doesn't automatically give your student money. Again, it's just letting those colleges know whether or not your student qualifies for financial aid. When doing the FAFSA, students and parents must have first filed taxes if they were required to by the IRS. And the FAFSA is now open for the next school year for 2025-2026. So we'll talk more about what it looks like to submit that application. The first thing we need to know is who the contributors are on the FAFSA, and the CASPA actually uses contributors as well. So contributors are anyone who is required to provide their information on the form itself. This can include the student's spouse, biological or adoptive parents, or the parent's spouse. We do have this handy graphic to figure out who parent contributors are on the FAFSA. So again, kind of take a look at this infographic and think through what situation might make the most sense in your family circumstance. All right, so once you've determined who the contributors are on the FAFSA, we'll go through some quick steps. So the first step is always creating an account. Before starting the actual FAFSA application, you'll want to create an account at studentaid.gov. All contributors are required to have their own account. And if you already had an existing account from prior years or have created one this year, they have been called FSA IDs. You are still able to use those. If your household includes two parents and those parents didn't file taxes together, each parent actually needs their own separate studentaid.gov account. In order to create your studentaid.gov account, there is some information you'll want to have at the ready, including personal information, so name, date of birth, social security number. If you don't have a social security number, we'll talk through the steps to create your account a little bit later in the presentation. We'll also need contact information, including email and a phone number. All right, and when studentaid.gov accounts are created, they always need to be authenticated, and those are done via codes that will be received via an email or a text. That's how the identities are matched, and verified emails are required with all studentaid.gov accounts. So those will be matched via social security numbers. And if you don't have a social security number, they'll use knowledge-based identity questions, which I'll show on an upcoming slide. Accounts being authenticated typically take up to 3 days. And for more information, you're welcome to scan the QR code for steps for authenticating accounts for parents or spouses without social security numbers. And that is available in both English and Spanish. All right, so to dive into account creation for parents who don't have social security numbers, you will leave the social security number box blank when you're creating your account for the first time. If you do have a social security number, you are required to enter it to create your account, and you want to be absolutely sure that it's typed correctly. It's very challenging to get it fixed if you have to go back and fix that later. So always double check that it's typed out correctly. If you don't have a social security number, you click the blue link that we've circled in the example here that says, what if I don't have a social security number? And then mark the box that says, I do not have an SSN. If parents are married, filed taxes jointly, and one has a social security number, then that parent should be the one creating the account. And for parents without social security numbers, they do require you to enter a mailing address because that's what's used in the identity verification process. It can be a foreign address if parents are living in a foreign country. There aren't restrictions around that. Two important pro tips are that when the student enters the parent information on the FAFSA, it must exactly match the parent's account. So we will recommend saving a screenshot of the name, birth date, and addresses that were used just so we can ensure there's an exact match. And then once the contact information and communication preferences are set, the parent might be seeing those knowledge-based questions that I had referenced earlier, and these are questions that are used to verify your identity. So the questions vary for parents. They're not the same for everyone that's creating the application. Parents can expect to see 4 different questions, and you only have one chance to answer these questions correctly. So you want to be very clear in your answers. The identity verification is powered by TransUnion, but it is not a credit check, and it doesn't require credit history. TransUnion is just providing that identity verification. So it's only used for that, and the current law says that information provided on the FAFSA can only be used for determining financial aid eligibility, and feel free to ask us any questions in the chat. Just a few more pro tips for parents who don't have social security numbers. Either the student or the parent can begin the FAFSA process. For parents without social security numbers, the match with the FAFSA and the parent account is a lot easier if the parent is the one to start the process and then invites the student. However, if the student's the one who starts the FAFSA, just be sure to type the parent information exactly as it appears on the studentaid.gov account, including any abbreviations, spacing, second last names. We'll often see abbreviations with streets and addresses. Just make sure that everything is the same. If the parent receives the FAFSA email invitation but doesn't see the student's FAFSA, that means that the system didn't match it and the student should log in on their side again and re-invite the parent. All right, and then a few final resources for the FAFSA before we switch over to talking about CASFA. We have shared some website, and you can, again, use the QR code here to just learn more pro tips for the FAFSA, and you are able to toggle between English and Spanish to read those. Okay. And then a few last things just to prepare for the FAFSA or the CASFA. We always recommend that students and their family try to gather as much of these materials as you have before starting the application. So you'll want to have your studentaid.gov accounts created as we just walked through. You'll want to grab your 2023 tax returns if you were required to file. You'll want to know the amount of child support that you might have received in the past year, as well as any asset information, including total amounts of cash savings and checking accounts, any investments, trust fund, real estate, bonds, just an idea of net worth of investments, and then the net worth of any businesses or farms outside of the home that you currently reside in. Additionally, you want to know any federal means benefits that your family is benefiting from, like food stamps, Medicaid, etc. And then the list of colleges that your student is interested in applying to and possibly attending in the upcoming year. The FAFSA and CASFA now allow students to list up to 20 colleges or universities at a time with the application, which ensures that the financial aid application is sent to each of those schools. So we recommend having all of this information at the ready when you begin your application, but if some of this information doesn't apply to you, that's okay. Some students or parents might not have some of these items. And then as you're navigating through the FAFSA, there is a screen about providing consent. So this page will explain to the student or the parent about providing their consent to share their federal tax information. In doing this, the student and parents' tax information is transferred directly and really seamlessly into the FAFSA from the IRS itself. So consent is required no matter the family's personal situation to be eligible for federal aid, including tax filers, non-tax filers, and foreign tax filers. If a student or a parent doesn't consent, then the FAFSA doesn't fully process and the student can't receive financial aid. So it is extremely important to provide consent for that information to be shared to the FAFSA. All you need to do is have the student select approve, as we have shown on the screen here, and then that provides the consent to move on to the next page. All right, and then just a few last things to know after you've submitted the FAFSA. Federal Student Aid then processes the application and sends it out to each of the colleges that your student listed on the application. Students receive what's called a Student Aid Index or an SAI based on all of the information that was included in the FAFSA application. The SAI is a number and it's calculated from the financial aid information that is entered on the FAFSA. And then your student's college will use that to determine the amount of financial aid that your student is eligible for and that they can provide to them in the upcoming year. Students should always be paying attention to all communication from college financial aid offices and the U.S. Department of Education. Consistently check emails all the time. Financial aid offices are always reaching out to your student if they need any further information in order to be able to provide your student with that financial aid. And then once the colleges process the financial aid, they will send students what's called an official financial aid award offer, which will outline all of the grants, scholarships, loans, and other financial aid work study that your student might be eligible for in the upcoming year. The timing does vary between colleges and universities, so it's always best to ask the financial aid office if you have questions about when your student can expect to see their official financial aid award letter. Right, and now I'm gonna turn it over to my teammate Natasha to talk about the CASPA application.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making time to be with us tonight and to learn more about financial aid. Just want to encourage you all once again, if you do have any questions at all, if you're wondering about it, chances are there are lots of other people listening who are also wondering the same thing. So please don't hesitate to put those questions in the chat, and we will be thrilled to respond to those for you, or in the comments rather. So now we're going to turn our attention away from the FAFSA that Maria was just speaking about, and we're going to talk about the CASFA. CASFA stands for Colorado Application for State Financial Aid, and it's very, very similar to FAFSA, but the difference is in which students should be completing it. So the purpose of CASFA is to provide a financial aid application for Colorado students who are not eligible for federal aid. And that is going to be based on their citizenship or immigration status. So as Maria talked about at the beginning of the presentation, if your student is a U.S. citizen, permanent legal resident, or what's considered an eligible non-citizen, then they will be doing the FAFSA. But if they don't fit into one of those categories, according to the chart that we showed and that you can find from our website, then they will do the CASFA. So every Colorado student should be able to complete one of those two applications. And the important thing is they will only do one. So there's no situation where the same student will do both the FAFSA and the CASFA. They will do one or the other depending on their own circumstances. Like the FAFSA, the CASFA is used to determine whether the student is going to qualify for financial aid. It's a little bit different, though, because what it opens up for the student is state financial aid rather than the federal aid that can be accessed through the FAFSA. It also allows colleges to award what's called institutional aid, which is aid offered by that college or university directly. So that could be grants, scholarships, loans, work study, all of the things that Maria mentioned can be offered by the university using their own funds rather than the federal funds. The CASFA is specific to Colorado. So if you're listening to this and your student lives in Montana or Texas, they will not be doing the CASFA. They should check instead to see if there's an application in your state. And a pro tip, we have the login web address for the CASFA on the screen, but you can see that it's very long. So what we recommend is that if you're looking to get started on the CASFA, you can just Google complete CASFA or CASFA login, and that will take you right to the login page in a quick search. So similar to FAFSA, the first step for CASFA is to create a login. One thing that's important with the CASFA is that the student does need to be the one to get started. So the student will create their login first, and parents will wait to create their login until they receive an email inviting them to join their student's CASFA. There's a screenshot that you see here that shows what the sign-in page looks like. And at the bottom of that little screen below the sign-in box, you'll see there's a link where it says sign up. That's where the orange arrow is pointing, and that's where you will get started, or your student will get started to create their CASFA login. So a few things to keep in mind for CASFA success. First, it's really important that the student and parent information, so names, dates of birth, emails, are entered really carefully so that they will match up when the student asks the parent to join the CASFA. So one thing that we've learned is that students need to make sure they're actually typing out their information as they're filling out the form rather than using their browser's autofill. They also want to be sure to use full names, no nicknames, no abbreviations. Their names should be entered exactly the way they appear on any official credentials. So that would be the way they appear on their high school transcript, on their driver's license, things like that, because the college is going to try to match the information from the CASFA to the student's admissions application. So it's really important that the names and birth dates are entered in the same way. And another thing to note is with those key pieces of information like name, date of birth, and email, the CASFA doesn't allow the student to change those after the application has been submitted. So it's worth taking the time to check very carefully to make sure they're typed accurately in the beginning. And again, the student is going to enter their parents' information to invite them to contribute to the CASFA. So the parent, when they go to type in their own name, date of birth, and email, once they receive that invitation, it needs to exactly match how the student entered it. So a lot of attention to detail required with these financial aid applications to make sure that there's a successful submission. So after the student and parents submit the CASFA, all of the information provided on the CASFA is going to be sent to the colleges listed, just like we talked about with FAFSA. Students do need to be sure to pay attention to any communication that they receive from their college, because if the colleges are asking for additional information, they're going to be communicating via email to get students to follow up. We also recommend that students who complete the CASFA follow up with the financial aid office at each college that they get accepted into. And the reason for that is that there can often be some additional forms that the college needs the student to fill out to make sure that they qualify for Colorado's in-state tuition and state aid. So they should be checking the portal for the college once they've been accepted, and they can always reach out to the financial aid office just to make sure that they've turned in everything that the college needs. So a few takeaways and reminders about applying for financial aid. So first, as we mentioned, students are only going to complete one financial aid application per year, either the FAFSA or the CASFA, based on which citizenship or immigration status they fit into. They do need to remember to apply for financial aid every year that they're going to be in college. So it's not a one-time deal. It's an every year, an annual process to make sure that they have financial aid each year. For the FAFSA, all the contributors, so that could be the student's spouse if they're married, biological or adoptive parents, and potentially the parent's spouse if the parent has divorced the other parent and remarried. All of those folks will be required to create a studentaid.gov account. And if a parent doesn't have a social security number, that's totally okay. They will still create a studentaid.gov account. And once again, we say this a lot because it is really important. The information on their account, including the address, needs to exactly match what the student enters on the FAFSA. All contributors to the FAFSA do need to provide their consent to share tax information. Even if they didn't file taxes, they still need to provide that consent. If they don't provide consent, then the student's application won't be processed and they will not be eligible to receive financial aid. And once again, most students who are under the age of 24 will need to provide parent information. And if the parents don't provide that information, the student is not going to be eligible for financial aid. All right, so you're probably wondering, wow, that was a lot of information. How can I find those resources if I want to look them up again later? Great news, we have a website that has all the information that we talked about tonight and more available to you. It has information about applying to college, applying for financial aid, the DSF scholarship, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, and other tips about getting prepared for college and how to succeed once the student gets started. Also has information about events like this that we host. And we have a lot of opportunities for you to get help with financial aid. And that can include signing up for the workshops that you see the dates listed on your screen. If you go to our website, you'll be able to find the link to register. That link is not live yet, but it will be live in the next few days. So pay attention to our socials. We'll share those at the end of this presentation, so you can follow us if you haven't already. But just know that we are offering a lot of opportunities for you and your student to get help with completing those financial aid applications. Or if you just have questions, it's a great opportunity to answer those too. All right, we are going to pause now for any questions. And I will invite Maria to come off mute if you'd like. And we have a few questions from our library that we know folks often wonder about. So maybe we can go ahead and get started with those. And I have a question that I'll ask Maria. Maria, if parents don't live together, is the parent contributor based on whether or not the student is claimed on 2023 taxes?
Yeah, that's a question that we get a lot when we're thinking about who's filling out the FAFSA, who claimed who on taxes. When we're thinking about who provided more financial support, that's always defined as the parent who paid for the larger share of housing, food, clothes, medical care, transportation, etc. So it's not necessarily the parent who claimed the student on the 2023 taxes, it's the parent who provided more financial support that year.
Thank you.
And I did see that we had another question that came in. So the question is, can a parent complete their part of the application first? Or if a parent wants to just entirely do the FAFSA for their student, are they allowed to do that?
Great question. So the parent can begin the FAFSA first and then invite their student to complete their portion. The way that should work is that the student won't see the information that the parent entered, and the parent doesn't see the answers to demographic information entered by the student. The FAFSA won't be considered complete until both the student and parent complete their portions. There isn't really an option for the parent to complete the FAFSA entirely without the student's participation, because the student does need to use their own individual studentaid.gov account to log in and sign and make sure the information is correct. When they're doing that, that is like their legal signature, even though it's electronic. So it is important that the student and the parent are both participating in their portion of the FAFSA. For the CASFA, as we mentioned, the student does need to be the one to get started. They'll complete their portion first and then invite the parent to join. So it does work a little bit differently for the CASFA in terms of who will get started. Maria, it looks like we have another question. Are people who are maybe a legal guardian or other family member of the student considered contributors?
That's a great question, and the answer is no. If a student's in a legal guardianship as determined by a court, they're actually considered independent for the FAFSA and will need to provide documentation of that guardianship to the financial aid office at their school. It's important to remember that legal guardians aren't contributors unless they are also the student's legal parent, either biological or adoptive. If a student is independent or provisionally independent for any reason, they are actually the only contributor to their FAFSA.
Thank you very much, Maria. All right, well, I think with that, that's all the questions that we have for right now. So we will continue on with our presentation. And I believe I'm handing it back over to Maria.
Thanks, Natasha. So we are going to transition to now talking about applying for our scholarship, the Denver Scholarship Foundation Scholarship, and applications for our scholarship for the 2025-2026 school year open really soon on February 1st. So let's dive into it. All right, so why apply to our scholarship? Beyond just the financial support that you'll get from DSF, your student will also receive what we call a campus contact at their school or university. So we have student support staff at all 30 of our college partners in Colorado. So your student will have regular check-ins with their campus advisor to learn information about resources on their campus, like tutoring and financial aid, and to get connected to different DSF opportunities and communities and events at their campus. So really great to have that campus contact supporting them throughout their college journey. They'll also gain access to other opportunities, including DSF alumni communities once they've graduated, DSF scholar communities while they're in school. They'll get invited to our big signature events of the year, including our DSF Gala in the fall and our Scholar Summit, which is an annual leadership conference for all of our scholars in the spring. Depending on your student's school, they might also have campus-specific events and workshops that they get access to get extra support during their college journey, as well as being able to connect with different community, corporate, and alumni partners that we have. And then the last piece is that they will get support with completing financial aid and renewing their scholarship applications each year. So we're always around to help them submit FAFSA or CASFA, as well as the DSF renewal app. All scholarship applications and updates to your students' contact info are done through the DSF student portal on our website, and you can access that really easily at portal.denverscholarship.org. We've got the QR code linked here in the presentation if you want to open that on your own. When students are registering for the first time, we always encourage them to do so with their personal email, whether that's a Gmail account or another personal email that they'll have for life. We don't want students using their DPS or high school email accounts because those often can go away. And so definitely encourage your student to register in our portal with their personal email.
All right, so Maria mentioned that the scholarship application will open on February 1st. Probably even more important to know is that it will be closed at the end of the day on May 1st. So if you have a student who is eligible to apply, maybe they're graduating from a DPS high school this year, or they have previously received the DSF scholarship, please make sure that they pay attention to that May 1st date. Students do need to renew their DSF application by May 1st for every year that they plan to be in college. It's a very straightforward application, doesn't take much time at all to do, and so we really want to make sure that everybody remembers to get that done. All right. So one piece that students will do when they're applying for the DSF scholarship for the first time is that they do need to list 2 additional scholarships and a campus support program, or 3 additional scholarships that they've applied for. And the reason is that DSF wants to make sure that they are well supported both financially and in terms of the wraparound supports that Maria was mentioning when they get started in college. So we really, really recommend that they apply for institutional scholarships, which are scholarships offered by their college. They can find those from any college's financial aid webpage or by searching scholarships from the main college webpage. Also important to keep in mind that FAFSA, CASFA, and the Colorado Opportunity Fund are not scholarships. Those are other types of funding or ways to access funding sources, but they cannot be listed on the DSF application as additional scholarships. If your student needs to find some scholarships or support programs to apply for, that is completely natural. That's what most students will be experiencing this year as they're getting ready to do their first DSF application, so they can visit their DSF Future Center. If they go to one of the high schools where we work, they can visit their counselor's office and ask, or they can go to our website. We've got a friendly URL there on the screen and just search for scholarships. We have lots of resources for both scholarships and support programs. We want all students to know that completing the DSF application is just the first step towards getting the scholarship. We want them to be sure that they're reading any emails we send them and that they opt in to receive our texts, because we do send lots of important reminders about upcoming deadlines and requirements that they need to meet. So paying attention to those communications is a huge part of making sure that they will receive the scholarship when the next school year starts. We have a very important deadline over the summer. So once students complete their application by that May 1st deadline, the next thing they need to pay attention to are these tasks to complete by July 15th. The first one is they need to make sure that they've told DSF of their final college choice. We know that as they're applying in the spring, they may still be making up their mind about their plans for next year. But by July 15th, they need to log back into their DSF portal and just let us know what their final college choice will be. We also need them to make sure they complete any financial aid requirements at their college. So that's going to include either the FAFSA or CASFA, but then it may also include providing some additional documents or forms, and they should be checking in with their financial aid office to see if everything is complete. Just a note, our scholarship is available at 30 college partners around the state of Colorado, and you or your student can find the list of all of those colleges by going to our website. We've got another friendly URL here, which is denverscholarship.org/colleges to see all of the colleges that we partner with. There are additional requirements that students must complete in order to receive a DSF award. So we have some resources to help them stay on track. One is a handout, which is an overview of the scholarship. It's just a one-page front and back, goes over all of the eligibility requirements. It also talks about how long students can receive the scholarship, how much money they can expect to receive, and the list of deadlines and requirements that they need to meet each year in order to receive it. We also offer what we call an Almost There workshop. That'll be in late April or early May. And that's for our new applicants, so students who are applying for the scholarship for the first time. Students will receive the invitation to join that session after they've applied for the scholarship. If they attend one of our Future Center high schools, it'll be an in-person session at their high school. For any student who attends a Denver public school that doesn't have a Future Center, and that would include schools like DSST and the KIPP schools, we offer an online session for those students, and we will communicate that to them and to their counselors so that they can be encouraged to join us and learn more about everything they need to do to receive the scholarship. There are also lots of resources available in their DSF student portal that they can access at any time to learn more about the expectations for the scholarship. Of course, once again, our website, and then probably the most valuable and timely are email and text reminders, both from the DSF scholarship team and from their DSF advisor, just letting them know when those important deadlines are coming up. So students often want to know how long they can expect to receive the DSF scholarship. So they do have up to 5 years total to receive DSF. The way that it works is that they are eligible for a certain number of years depending on the type of college that they're attending. So to start with, students are eligible for their first 2 years at any of the 3 college types: technical college, community college, or a 4-year college or university. In year 3, they are eligible at a community college or a four-year college or university. And then in years 4 and 5, they're eligible to receive the scholarship at a four-year college. If a student decides that they're going to take some time off, they don't enroll, or they don't qualify for the scholarship during either a semester or a year during that time, that does still count towards their overall years of eligibility. So you can think about it as a clock, and that 5-year clock starts as soon as a student applies and meets DSF's initial eligibility requirements. So that was a lot of information, and we are going to stop there. There are, as we said, lots more resources on our website that you and your student can access, either to learn more about the DSF scholarship or to learn more about applying for financial aid. Students or parents with specific questions about the scholarship or whether an individual student is eligible to apply can reach out to us. The phone number is on the screen, or you're also welcome to send us an email asking your question, and the URL or web address to do that is also there on the screen for you.
All right, we do have a few questions that have come in while you've been presenting, Natasha. The first one is, can my student transfer from a four-year university to a community college and then still receive the DSF scholarship?
That's a great question. So as I just was mentioning, students do have up to 5 years total eligibility. So if a student decides to start at a community college, they'd be able to receive the DSF scholarship at the community college for up to their first 3 years of college, and then they would still have 2 remaining years at a four-year college. So they also could maybe come in and only need 1 year at the community college to finish an associate's degree and transfer at that point. Basically, they can use up to 3 years at the community college and then any remaining time within the 5 years to receive DSF at the four-year. Great question. We do often also have students who are, maybe they get started at a four-year and then they decide that actually they want to go to a technical college or community college to get an initial certificate or associates and then go back to the four-year university. They can do that as well, as long as they're keeping in mind those limits of 2 years, up to 2 years at a technical college, the first 3 years at a community college, and any of the 5 years at a four-year.
Great, thanks, Natasha. A couple other questions that have come in. What colleges can my student receive your scholarship at?
DSF has 30 college partners, which are all around the state of Colorado. That includes technical, community, and four-year colleges. The full list is available on our website. So that's at denverscholarship.org/colleges, or you can just go to our website and search the word colleges and you will find that list.
Great. And then one more question. What if my student isn't sure where they're going to go to college by the time that your application closes?
So students, as we mentioned, as long as they've completed their DSF scholarship application by May 1st, they will have until July 15th each year to update their college choice on their DSF student portal. So they do have some additional time to make that decision. And if they ever have questions about their requirements, or if they're concerned about maybe potentially missing a deadline or needing more time, they should always reach out to talk to us about it. And we will help guide them through what they need to know to be sure that they are successful. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Cindy, who's going to close us out.
Thank you so
And with
much,
that, I'm
Natasha.
going to
And
get
thank
back
you so
to
much,
Jenny.
Maria.
So,
We're very
Ava?
grateful for the information that you both have provided. We're going to
Thank
go
you
ahead
so
and
much.
end the recording.